Today we are welcoming J.R. Henry to the show. How you doing, man?
Good, Anthony. How are you?
Doing awesome. I'm really excited to have you because I know you got a great story. You got a lot of insights, and just you got a good heart. And you really want to help people, especially men who've been through this. So I'm curious to hear from yourself. Like, how did you get into this space? What's your story? And like, what was the motivation for you coming into this space?
Well, it goes back quite a ways. My story starts the day after I was born. Like most men, I was circumcised as an infant the day after I was born. For some men, that means nothing more than that. It doesn't seem to affect them. I would disagree with that. But for me, it means there's a scar where the rest of my penis used to be. That's what that means to me. And frankly, I'm still trying and probably will never fully understand the impact that it's had on me. Um, but part of the, for instance, part of the issue I have, and I'm still trying to grapple with, is just the mystery behind it all. I don't know much of the circumstances behind the procedure that happened to me. I would have liked to have known. It would have been nice if somebody asked me, "Hey, JR, do you want to have the most sensitive part of your penis removed?" Of course, that didn't happen, and again, that's the case with millions and millions and millions of men in America and other parts of the world, developed parts of the world. So I don't know what device was used. I don't know how long it took. I don't know. I don't know if I was restrained or not. There's a device. It's called a circumcision restraint, or the trade name, or um, the trade name is a circumstraint device, where they actually tie down the infant so they can't move when this procedure is being performed on them. This happened to me back in the 80s, so it was most certainly done without anesthesia, and nobody told me about it. My parents didn't tell me about it. I had to learn this all by myself. I didn't learn until I was in my late 20s that this was done to me so I would look like my father. That was that was the excuse for it. I never got any other excuse. Um, I've had conversations with my parents. Well, I shouldn't say parents. I've had conversations about this with my mother. My father passed. He died over 15 years ago. So unfortunately for me, I can't even confront him about this. That's another part of the problem I'm dealing with is dealing with the past. When I started questioning why this happened to me and the effect that it had on me, it really trickled down into questioning all aspects of my life. So when I was around 11 years old, I first learned that, and it's tough to say that I learned anything from that experience. If anything, I was just left more confused. And when I was 11 years old, I found out that there were penises that were different than mine. One of the neighborhood kids who, I'll just say, had a developmental disability. One day in the neighborhood we were playing, and he exposed himself, and I saw his penis, and it looked nothing like mine. Um, and that was my first exposure to what the human body's supposed to look like. Of course, at the time, I didn't know that. At the time, actually, I thought that there was something wrong with him. It turns out I'm the one that's missing part of their body. So again, none of this was explained to me. It was all very confusing. And in retrospect, looking back on it, there were a lot of signs. I didn't have a normal sexual development. And, you know, we can get into genital anatomy and male sexual development and why I didn't have a normal sexual development. But I suppose the second big milestone in this issue was conversation my girlfriend and I were having after sex. She was just curious about the male body and how men experience orgasms and things like that, you know, like what it felt like. And she asked me what an orgasm felt like, and I had a hard time answering that question. And from what I recall, went something along the lines of, well, you know, there's feeling there. I feel something. I guess it feels good. And she kind of retorted back, well, what do you mean? Do you not feel it through your body? Like you don't feel it in your legs or like going up your spine or anything? And I said, no, I don't feel anything like that when I have an orgasm. And that was the first time that I connected the dots and realized something's wrong here. And I knew that circumcision had something to do with it. And I have anecdotal evidence that even uh, points to that. Um, let's say in my mid 30s, I discovered foreskin restoration, which is something that men can do to regain some of the function and uh, look of the male foreskin. It's a it's a practice of elongating the skin over time to create basically a facsimile of foreskin. And when I learned about it, I just started doing it. It wasn't a question of whether or not I should do this. It was a gut reaction that I just started doing it, and I haven't stopped. And throughout the last 5 years, I've gained some of the function back in my penis because the foreskin is the penis. It's of the penis. And it's really opened my eyes to what I lost. I'll never know exactly what I lost, but through foreskin restoration and gaining protection that I should have with the skin that I should have had, or at least, like I said, the simile of what a foreskin would be. It's opened my eyes to what having an intact genitalia could be like, and um, that's part of the reason I'm able to talk about this today. The main driver that really got me talking about this was in recognizing the suffering and pain in other men that have gone through this. It allowed me to discover self compassion, which was a foreign concept to me before this. I recognized the pain and suffering in these men in myself, and I was able to feel genuine sadness and compassion and really connect with what other men are going through. And it just clicked for me. Oh, I'm one of those men. And uh, through self compassion, I've been able to let go of some of that pain, and I'm ready to talk about it. So that's why I'm able to talk about it, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome, man. That's a great story. It's like a lot of us, we get into space that we're in due to some type of pain, and then we kind of recognize there's an issue with our situation, and then coming out on the other side of that, want to help other people, man. So I commend you for that. So let's get into the history. Like, how did this all start, especially here in America? And who started it? Why did it all start? Like, tell us about that.
Well, circumcision predates recorded history. We don't really know where it stemmed from. We don't know the origins of it. And that extends to genital cutting in general for males and females. But one myth is that circumcision originated as a hygiene measure or as a health health measure, and there's really no evidence for that. And when you really start to think about that claim, um, it starts to fall apart when you think about other forms of body modification and mutilations that are done in cultures, because that's what circumcision is. It's a body modification. Piercings, earlobe stretching, lip stretching, corsetting, and foot binding are all different types of body modifications, and none of them have anything whatsoever to do with health or hygiene. And even if those claims were made, of course, say we know that's all BS, right? And it's the same for circumcision. Another thing that we uh, can look at as far as the history of circumcision is that we've known for a long time that it diminishes sexual pleasure, and that claim's been made throughout history. Nearly 1,000 years ago, the Rabbi Moses Maimonides made that claim, and he said that that was one of the reasons for circumcising, and that it diminishes pleasure for men and also for women. When you look at the more recent history, you can find the same claim through John Harvey Kellogg, and he claimed that, or proposed that, circumcision should be done to boys without anesthesia so that the pain is correlated with or connected to sexual desire. In his case, it was masturbation. But in America, circumcision became common through the involvement of the medical industry. There were a few doctors in the late 18th century that promoted circumcision as a cure to all kinds of different ailments, from aneurysm to paralysis to intestinal worms, you name it. The circumcision is sometimes referred to as a cure seeking a disease. So it really caught on in America, not by having the procedure done on consenting men who could choose whether or not this was done to him. The practice gained popularity by doing it to infants that couldn't object to the procedure. And it's really a historical artifact. The claims, the medical claims, have changed over the last century. And we can talk about some of those claims that are still touted today. But this procedure today is done on healthy, non-consenting infants that just don't have any other say.
Absolutely, man. So one thing that stuck out to me there was how Kellogg, like, he didn't do the anesthesia as a pain correlation. My understanding that it was like they thought that babies don't feel pain, which we know, of course, is not the case. Is that something I have wrong, or is that tell me more about that?
Well, people will. I don't know. I cannot justify inflicting pain on another human being needlessly. So I think John Harvey Kellogg's idea was, and not only not only the foreskin was seen as a proponent or a risk for disease, but back in the early 20th century, masturbation was also seen that way too. So John Harvey Kellogg proposed that circumcision be done without anesthesia to purposely inflict pain on the child, which of course is wrong. It's a fundamental wrong, especially for an infant. I mean, if you did this to a grown man, you'd be lucky to get away with your life. I mean, he'd be clawing at your neck to try to not have part of his penis chopped off. That's what the circumstraint device is for. It's for preventing babies from defending themselves or themselves, because girls are also victims of genital cutting too, just not to the extent that boys are in America. But boys will kick. They'll kick their aggressors when a knife is brought to their genitals. So to say that a baby's defenseless is not true. They do defend themselves. So yeah, of course it's wrong.
100%, man. So like anybody knows anything about like somatic experiencing and healing and all that, we know like especially like the first day they're born, even if we're quote not aware of things, like it does end up in the body somehow. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, man. So from what you've seen, like is there any data behind the reason why people do this? Is there any actual research studies why people would want to do this in the first place? Like, are there actually any benefits at all to this procedure?
There's a wealth of information out there. Most of it's bullshit. Um, there's no medical indication for circumcising an infant. If the tissue is healthy, there's no justification for removing it. We don't think this way about any other part of the body. And, like I said, going back to the history of circumcision, it's a historical artifact, but um, part of the reason that this is still going on is that it's a moneymaker. It's easy money for doctors. So there's an incentive to circumcise. There's a monetary incentive to circumcise, and I think there's a control and power incentive as well. I'm supposed to look like somebody else. I don't get a say. There's no medical indication for it. Some of the claims that it reduces UTIs and that it reduces cancer risk and that it prevents STIs are all nonsense, especially for infants. For starters, it takes 100 circumcisions to prevent one UTI infection. UTIs are treated with antibiotics, not by cutting off parts of the body. As far as circumcision being used as a reducing STIs, well, babies aren't sexually active, so we don't have to worry about that either. And as far as the cancer risk goes, penile cancer is one of the rarest forms of cancer. And it only happens in elderly men. So again, no reason to do it to a baby.
Definitely. So one thing I like to point to people is something called the relative risk reduction and absolute risk reduction. Like you kind of mentioned it before with the 1 to 100 thing. But a lot of people, it's not just with this, but a lot of things, what people do is they say maybe something is 95% effective, right? But what people don't realize is that they're pointing to the relative risk reduction, which most people have no idea what this actually is. And essentially, the relative risk reduction is designed to compare research trials to other research trials. So it's not necessarily about the person itself. But then on the other hand, we have the absolute risk reduction, which is designed for the person itself. So that's the risk reduction for you. Like you said, back to the relative risk reduction, that's like you can have, say, maybe a 30% risk reduction of something. But comparing that to the trials, when we actually look at it, it usually ends up being like 3%. So that's what we have to look at. Like it's usually way less than what it actually is. And it's just not with this, but it's a lot of things. So when it comes to the foreskin, like why do we have it in the first place? Because as I know as a health coach, like we're everything that we're born with, we actually need in some way, shape, or form. And there's certain things like doctors may like too quick to take out someone's gallbladder, for example, or tonsils or whatever. Like, is there a certain time and place for that? Perhaps, but the vast majority of the time, like we're just not asking questions and how this happened in the first place. We're not talking about root cause issues. We're just kind of going haphazardly doing things and essentially looking at the body as parts and not looking at it as a whole. Because when we look at it as a whole, like body integrity, like you speak about, then everything is connected. Everything has its place. So, like based on what you've seen, like what is the purpose? Like, why do we have this skin in the first place?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up. Just in talking about this issue, we use words like parts, but we're complete organisms. We're not born on it. We're not built on an assembly line. Like the foreskin isn't something that you can just take off. Well, I guess according to some people it is, but yeah, we're complete organisms, and the foreskin has functions. One of the main functions, at least during intercourse, is it acts as a gliding bearing between the man and his partner. So there's less friction in the vaginal wall. Um, it protects the glands or head of the penis. So the foreskin, even the name foreskin is a misnomer in itself. It's so much more than skin. The technical term for it is the prepuce, and the prepuce is composed of a few main features. The first is the ridged band, which is located at the tip of the penis in a flaccid state, and this is always lost to circumcision. The ridged band is a mucocutaneous junction between the inner mucosa of the prepuce or foreskin and the outer shaft skin of the penis. And it protects the glands of the penis, or the head of the penis. On the same token, the glands protects the inner mucosa of the foreskin, maybe even more importantly so, because the foreskin contains the most innervated tissue of the penis. Another feature of the prepuce or foreskin is the frenulum. And the frenulum is it's a band of tissue that helps to support the foreskin. We have a frenulum under our tongue and holding our lips together. So that little band of tissue that holds your lip together, that's a frenulum as well. And that is sometimes lost to circumcision and sometimes not. It's very sensitive tissue. One of the reasons I started talking about this or felt the need to talk about this is through foreskin restoration, I gained some of the sensitivity back in my frenulum. I was fortunate enough to be spared my frenulum. If that were taken from me, I just wouldn't know that part of my body part was there. And I love my frenulum. I'm glad, it wasn't taken from me. So imagine how I feel about the rest of my body that when I say the rest of my body, I mean my foreskin. Imagine how I feel about that. I don't know what it looks like. I'll never know what it feels like. So again, getting back to the benefits of it and getting back to what you said about us being whole and complete organisms, one of the benefits of having a foreskin is it's part of being a human. It's part of the human experience.
Definitely, man. So yeah, like going back to kind of what we said, like everything that we have is something that we need, right? It's not like there's any part of the body that we just, whatever you believe, like the creator, God, whatever, it's just not like it's made a mistake and like humans have to go fix it, right, with surgery, which is kind of like the thinking, it seems. And so you talked about foreskin restoration a lot. So what is that? Is that like a process? Is that something that anyone can just do? How does that work?
Yeah, so like I said before, foreskin restoration is something circumcised men can do to regain the look and function of the foreskin. Now, you'll never gain back the tissue that you lost. So you can't get the ridged band back with circumcision. That's always lost to circumcision. but you can gain back the gliding function. You can gain back the protection of the glands, and you can gain back sensation from having the inner mucosa protected again. When this tissue is exposed, it dries out. Um, Before restoring, and I didn't know it at the time, but before restoring, I was numb in a lot of places down there. So the nice thing about foreskin restoration is you don't need anything to do it. You can use your hands. You can use your hands to manually stretch the foreskin um, uh, over the course of the day, usually with a few minute increments, maybe about between 30 minutes and 60 minutes a day. Um, so you don't need anything to start. And the other great thing about foreskin restoration is you start to see the benefits. You can start to see the benefits fairly quickly within a matter of a few months. Um, so I suggest every circumcised man explore foreskin restoration. Another great thing that it did for me was it gave me some sort of solution to this problem I had. It gave me something to act on. I look at foreskin restoration not only as somatic healing, right? I look at it as psychological healing too. It's giving me a path out of this. It's giving me a healing process that I can look forward to, even though it does take forever. It takes a long time to do it. So I'm not, I don't want to put too much praise on it. It does take a long time, but in my opinion, it's worth it. It really depends on how much skin you have. If you were if you were left with a lot of skin, it's going to take you less time to restore. Some men can restore in 1 to 2 years. For men like myself, I mean, it's probably going to take me another 5 years. So it can take 5 to 10 years to restore. Um, so, right, you don't need anything to start. There's other methods you can use to restore the foreskin. One method you can use to hold the foreskin over the glands is by using an O-ring. So the foreskin will actually just be held in place by the O-ring to give protection to the glands. Another method of foreskin restoration would be to use tape. So you can apply tape to the shafts of the penis and elongate the shaft skin of the penis over time to promote skin growth that way. And then there's another method that you can use is by using foreskin restoration devices. And these are devices specifically designed for restoring the foreskin. There's about, I say, maybe a dozen companies out there right now that are manufacturing these devices. So foreskin restoration is gaining in popularity. And it's safe to say that if a man's going to go through all this trouble to get back at least some of the function of his penis that he lost to circumcision, as a society, we really need to be thinking twice about what we're doing to these baby boys, because it's a lifelong, permanent genital injury. So that's your background in the foreskin restoration. Yeah, I look at it as you can have two attitudes about it. You can think, oh, this is going to take forever and it's a pain, and those feelings do come up. But really, once you get locked into a routine, it's like, to me, it's like, hygiene. It's just like regular brushing your teeth every day. You just, you do your restoration thing and get on with your day. So it can really be woven into your daily routine without too much interruption.
100%, man. One thing I want to touch on a little bit more was the nerve cells. So in foreskin itself, like what are the nerves? Like, do they have a name? How many are there? Like what role does this play in sensitivity?
Yeah, the foreskin is vascularized and highly innervated tissue. The tissue of the foreskin is the most innervated tissue on the male body. So one type of uh, nerve ending that is found in the foreskin through uh, histological testing. So that's done with a microscope where they actually look at the nerve cells of the tissue of the foreskin. They're called myciner corpuscles, and they're the same nerves that are found in the palm of your hand. So, I mean, you can demonstrate this, and you can practice it yourself. If you run your fingertips or your fingernails across the palm of your hand, you feel like this tingly, kind of tickly sensation. And actually, the lighter you go, the more you'll feel this sensation. And you can feel that there's a difference on the back of the hand, too. Um, if you have calluses, you can very much feel the difference. If you have calluses on your hand, or if you know somebody that has calluses on your hand, you can practice this by running your finger along the palm of the hand and over the callus, and you're going to notice that you have diminished sensation where that callus is. Um, and that's what circumcision does to uh, the mucosa skin and the glands, but more importantly, the mucosa skin, because that's where the majority of the nerve endings are. That skin, when it's exposed to air, it um, keratinizes. And so now you have a barrier of tissue between what should be mucosa skin and those nerve endings. So circumcision greatly diminishes the fine touch nerve receptors in the foreskin.
Definitely, man. Very interesting. So, do you know of any like lawsuits, or is this an ongoing thing that like Big Pharma has to face? Is there like a lot of like lawsuits that are involved with this, or what are your thoughts?
I know there's a lawsuit against the American Academy of Pediatrics. Um, I don't know the details of it. I know that it is involving a botched circumcision. So I don't know the details of the case, but I I'm not holding much stock in getting justice for this. Um, I mean, if you want to sue your doctor, go for it. The man that circumcised me, he's in his 90s now. I mean, that's not my fight. That's not it's not something I'm trying to do. I mean, I think we should and need to uh, focus on this at a legal level. Medicaid shouldn't be funding any circumcisions for infants. Um, and yeah, like I said, I mean, unless there's a medical necessity, circumcision shouldn't be done at all. That should be a last resort. There's much less invasive non-surgical methods to dealing with problems of the foreskin, and there's almost never a need for circumcision. So it really, in general, shouldn't be uh, covered by insurance. It's a cosmetic procedure.
Definitely.
But yeah, if we're going to go down the legal route, first we need to change minds. You know, the politicians are the ones that are going to be signing these bills to get circumcision removed from Medicaid, and the only way we're going to do that is if they're on the same page. So they need to understand that the men don't want this, and the only way that they're going to get that message is if men are talking about it.
Definitely. So what people need to keep in mind is like surgery doesn't always go according to plan. Like the procedure is bad enough, but like you said, there's botched surgeries, and this is not something we should just be routine on a regular basis. It's like it's a factory, like these things, like bad things go with these things, and it's not always going according to plan. So that's another thing we got to keep in mind, right?
Yeah. Circumcision on an infant is a botch in itself. Like I said, it doesn't do anything for the child. All it does is inflict pain on the child. It separates the child from the mother needlessly. It is a lifelong genital injury that's largely hidden from the victim. So, I mean, I can talk a lot about the physical harm this circumcision causes, but the psychological harm that it causes is hasn't even really been explored. And frankly, I'm still dealing with it, and I don't think men ever really get over the bodily integrity violation that was done to them through circumcision.
What does body integrity mean to you? So now you speak of that. Is it you have like a does that go beyond this, or how do you fit that into your ideology?
Well, bodily integrity, I learned about this concept from the bioethicist uh, Brian Earp. He has a great essay. It's titled "The Child's Right to Bodily Integrity," which I recommend everybody read. It's a really easy read. I read it at least once a year. Um, and he defines bodily integrity as the right of all people to remain whole and free from bodily integrity infringements. Uh, so, a bodily integrity infringement would be any cutting or piercing of the skin or penetration of a bodily orifice. And bodily integrity infringement would become a violation when the bodily integrity infringement is not done for um, the way that Brian describes it is that it would leave the person in a worse state than if they hadn't had the procedure. So, in the case of circumcision, you're being left in a worse state. Your erogenous tissue is removed, the normal sexual function is removed. Um, I mean, we've talked a lot about how circumcision is harmful both physically and psychologically. So that's the idea of bodily integrity. And to be safe, uh, we should only be cutting or piercing the skin when there's a clear medical need. If if you have a life-threatening injury to your leg and your leg needs to be amputated or you'll die, then amputating the leg will leave you in a better position than if your leg hadn't been amputated. So that's the idea behind bodily integrity.
Makes sense, man. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is so the medical system itself, like beyond the circumcision, there's lawsuits endlessly happening. But the issue is that so what happens typically is no one has ever gone to jail, like in one of these pharmaceutical companies for anything they've ever done. They always get like paid some type of fine. Like for a drug, for example, they may get billions of dollars off the drug, but then they have some type of lawsuit for some type of criminal activity, and they'll pay like a tenth of what they made. And they have like the best legal team on the planet. So even if they get caught for things, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect them too much. And until like something changes in that, like because the system itself is inherently flawed. It's like it was never designed to work in the first place. Now, even as I say this, like there's a place for drugs, there's a place for surgery, but it's like that should be the farthest thing down the line. And doctors, like most of the time, they're very well meaning. Like they get into the space because they want to help people. The issue is that they are brought up in a system that, in a way, keeps them from doing that. Like the pharmaceutical companies themselves, that's where the issue is. And even within that, there's great people within the companies, but it's like the higher ups. That's a big part of the issue. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. The game's rigged. These doctors are protected. They're protected under the law to do this to kids. And one thing is wishful thinking from my part, but one thing I'd like to do, I'd like to get out of talking about this is I'd like to get some of these doctors to wake up and at the very least, the ones that aren't well-meaning, I want them to know that we're watching. People are watching you. You can't hide from this anymore. So it's best that you stop doing what you're doing. And for the ones that do genuinely believe that they're doing something good, uh, again, I have a hard time believing that, frankly, that that the professionals, quote unquote professionals, believe that they're doing good by this. Most of them know that there is no medical benefit to this, and it just needs to stop. Find better ways to make money.
Yeah, man. So, like an example, so I've learned a lot from John Abramson. He's like a litigator. He goes to, he's like, he's in the room in the court cases for these pharmaceutical companies. And a lot of times, like when it comes to research studies, which are like, the journals themselves are funded by Big Pharma in the first place. So keep that in mind. And a lot of times, like the summary of the data will be from like the drug reps and pharmaceutical companies are given to the doctors. So like there's so much data that is not actually given to the doctors. They're just given the summary, which is again done by the pharmaceutical company and given to them. And an example would be like Vioxx. This is back a while ago. It's a drug that like 40 to 60,000 people ended up dying from because there was data showing that it caused heart defects, heart problems. And but that data was not in anywhere in the summary, was not given to doctors, and they ended up having a huge lawsuit on this, paying billions of dollars in reparations. Again, no one went to jail, but the thing is that the data existed, but nobody knew about it. So it's kind of a similar thing here. Like just keeping body integrity in mind is what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, my message is you really got to be careful. You got to be careful about what you're putting into your body. And if you're having a child, you need to be really careful about what you're putting into your body, of course, for your child. Mothers are hopefully, in general, very careful about that. And we need to really get the conversation out there about this issue. I mean, I think we're a sick culture. Um, Cutting the genitals of 25% of the population before they can even speak, and then not telling them about it is sick. It's disgusting, and we need to stop doing it. And we need to start talking about it.
Definitely.
And
Isn't it true that like America is like really the only place that does this in the world on a regular basis?
there are other cultures that do it. It's hard to get hard numbers on the circumcision rates, but uh, one of the numbers is around 70%. 70% of American men are circumcised. You look at a country like Denmark, that number is between 1% and 2%.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like much more popular here due to Kellogg and his shenanigans. So basically, man, like bring it back to like freedom and empowerment, like because when there's things that go wrong in our life, like a lot of things we don't ask for, right? Like we're like born in circumstances like this or otherwise, but I feel like it's ultimately our responsibility to heal because then if we don't, we're going to pass this on to further generations. Like this, yeah, this may have happened, but this ends with us, right? Bringing it back to freedom and empowerment. How can we leverage this circumstance in our lives for actually making us better in a way? Like, yeah, these are unfavorable circumstances, but how can I become more empowered within myself? Because the reality is we're gonna have to develop certain character traits to overcome these obstacles. And maybe we never would have developed these character traits if these obstacles never happened, you know?
Yeah. You don't have many options when you're confronted with this issue as a circumcised man or as a man that has had this inflicted upon you. You can ignore it, you can deny it, um, you can be angry about it, or you can accept it and turn it into something positive. Um, One of the ways that we heal from trauma, which is what circumcision is, it's a physical and psychological trauma, is to talk about our trauma and to do something positive with our trauma. So if I can prevent just one boy from being circumcised by talking about this issue, it's a win for me. I won. If I can talk one man into restoring so he gains some function back in his sexuality with his partner and for himself, he can get more in touch with his body. That's a win for me. So yeah, you have a choice. You can either cower away and hide from the issue, or you can confront it head on and do something about it.
Definitely, man. Because like from the beginning, like we're always like told that it's normal, right? Like it's how it's supposed to be. And a lot of people like they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear there's a problem. They don't want to hear there's something wrong, especially if like this part of their body, right? So they just want to like feel like they're good, right? But it's not until we come to awareness, which is always the first step to change, like having awareness of the issue so you can actually transform it into something powerful. Because it's not about like being a victim, it's about being a victor in whatever circumstance it is. Because then we can affect positive change going on in the future. Because if we just sit in trauma, sit in the pain, or not even know that it exists, then we're just kind of living at a subpar way of being, whatever it is. Like circumcision aside for a moment, like if we're just like talking about life and struggles and all this, like having awareness is the first step to change. Then we can take progressive action from there. But if we just keep ignoring the issue and we're never going to live up to our full potential in the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say that the positive things have come out of this because it's it's been such a negative impact for me, circumcision. Again, in ways I'm still discovering. But one of the things that I've gotten out of this is just really more awareness out of my body, more body awareness. I'm only just beginning to learn how dissociated I was with my body. Uh, what I could contribute to, could I contribute that to circumcision? I don't know. Um, but at the very least, I'm learning more about myself and learning about anatomy and promoting body positivity, not body positivity, but bodily integrity, um, and keeping our bodies whole and being in touch with our bodies. And yeah, I mean, this has opened me up into a whole new area of exploration. So overall, it's been a positive thing. It's been painful, but it's been positive. In the long run, I think I'm certainly better off having gone down this road rather than just not knowing about what happened to me.
Definitely, man. From your perspective, what do you believe, like as a society, we can do to become more aware of this, and actually, like start a conversation and go from there?
Talk about it in any capacity that you're comfortable with. This topic's hard to talk about. It's a difficult topic to discuss, even though the solution of the problem is very simple. In actuality, it's almost comically simple. The solution to this is to stop cutting babies. That's it. And one of the ways we're going to get there, and we won't get there otherwise, is if we start talking about this. I start talking about the importance of the foreskin and um, talking about bodily integrity and personal autonomy and uh, just making people aware of this issue.
Yeah, man. Like a
So,
lot of times, like we do things that are ritual, like uh. So when it comes to like surgery, this is gonna be interesting, but like we a lot of times wear a mask for surgeon wear a mask, and when you actually look at the data, there's actually no validity behind this, and like it does not prevent infections, does not do anything like that. But yet this is a ritual that we continue to do, not because something works, because we're used to doing it, and we need to start living in a society based on facts, based on doing things because they're effective, doing them for a reason, not just because it's the way we've always done things. Like we need to be willing to grow and evolve in that type of way.
right, took doctors a long time to realize that using forceps is a bad idea. Um, but that's something that was just part of practice. The medicalization of birth, I think, has caused a lot more problems than it's solved. Um, yeah, home birth. Keep your kid away from knives.
Definitely, man. Yeah. Is there anything else on your mind that you like really want to get out to the people? Anything that we haven't talked about? Anything? Tell me.
No, I just yeah, like I said, if you've been affected by this, if you've been affected by circumcision, I suggest, you know, first off, educating yourself and get used to talking about this, whether it's through social media, whether it's through friends. If you know somebody that's expecting a boy, send them to yourallbaby.org to learn about how to care for an intact penis. It's a lot simpler than caring for a penis that has an open wound on it. Um, yeah, just spread the word and talk about how the circumcision has affected you. I I think that's a first great step in getting the message out.
Awesome. Another thing I'd like to add, like as parents, like I think it's important that we forgive ourselves as like we hear about this information and we may feel super guilty, and it's like at the time we really were doing the best that we could. Like we didn't. It's not like we're intentionally hurting our children, and we need to get beyond that, and because then you know we can educate our kids and like so they don't do this to them, and it stops with us. Like so the cutting doesn't continue with further generations.
Yeah, there's a lot of regret parents out there, and we need to hear their voices too. Um, Kind of goes back to what you said. Sometimes we do things out of routine as a culture, and later on we learn that it was the wrong thing to do. So, and circumcising your child is probably the biggest mistake you'll make. But um, you can help heal your child by admitting that, that and accepting that what you did was wrong. It's just apologizing. And also talking about it.
Definitely, man. So, yeah, this has been awesome. Like we talked a lot about a lot of things. Like I hope we opened a lot of people's eyes to like, this may not be the best thing going on. So if people want to learn more about you and get connected with you, how can they learn more?
Right now, I'm just on Twitter or X. My account is Gerhard Restore, so it's GERHARDT Restore. Um, that's how you can reach out to me, or if you want to learn more about what I've been saying. I haven't been
Awesome.
too active on social media lately, but I'm sticking around.
And if people like want to learn more about this in general, like are there resources that you recommend going to?
Yeah, I mentioned yourallbaby.org. You can go to Doctors Opposing Circumcision, Circumcision Resource Center. That's run by Dr. Ron Goldman. He wrote the book Circumcision: The Hidden Trauma. Those are all great resources to learn more about circumcision and anatomy and all kinds of stuff. There's plenty of great information on those sites.
All right, man. It's been awesome. Appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insights with us.
Man, thank you. It's been fun.
All right, man. See ya.
Thank you.